narrative shifts and fights to make after UFC 311. We're going to look at every single fighter that fought on this card. Was there a narrative shift? Maybe not. And who should they be fighting next? And we are going to be starting with people at the bottom of the card. Let's not get into the big fights yet. Tagir Ulanbekov versus Clayton Carpenter. Narrative shift with Tagir. I think Tagir was maybe starting to pack on a little bit momentum, hanging out with Makhachev. Same card as Umar, right? This was a bit of a disappointing performance for the Tagir fans, right? I mean, not the best, most dominant performance. It was competitive, a little bit of a smudge thing going on, lots of clinching up against the fence. He was basically sort of strength maxing his way to victory here. I think if there is a narrative shift at all, it's probably that Tagir is not that guy necessarily. But, I mean, listen, of course, the expectations for him are always going to be high because of who he trains with. But either way, who should Tagir Ulanbekov be fighting next? I think he should fight Asuel Mabayev. Let's get him in there with a guy that is short, stocky, has really good wrestling, EV at the end of his name, right? Let's do that. That seems like a good fight. Clayton Carpenter looked pretty good. I don't know who he's going to fight next, but let's get on to the next one. Grant Dawson, Diego Ferreira. Narrative shift with Grant Dawson. I mean, control. I think people are going to respect that Grant Dawson has some of the best ability to control people and smudge them on the ground. However, boring. That narrative is still going to be there when it comes to Grant Dawson. That nothing's going to change there. In his last fight, he got a TKO on the ground. People started talking about, Grant Dawson's style ain't so bad, but another rough decision for Grant Dawson. Skilled, of course. Grant is very skilled. He's a great grappler, but again, he's probably not winning over a ton of fans with that type of performance. And who do I want to see him fight next? Well, the guy that he called out, Beneil Dariush, I think that would be awesome. Beneil is one of the best grapplers in the sport. He's really difficult to out-scramble. He's got really crafty and creative jiu-jitsu. He's got that old man craftiness to him. So he's, very spindly and very strong. He's sort of got the strength of a mule. So it's going to be interesting to see how Grant Dawson can sort of maneuver around an old man Beneil Dariush. That'll be very interesting. I actually think that's a great fight. And also, looks like Grant Dawson was able to get a little bit gritty at moments in that fight against Diego Ferreira, where there were some moments where they were in the pocket. We know Beneil Dariush is coming off of a couple of KOs. Maybe Dawson's going to feel a little bit more comfortable to strike with him. And maybe Beneil's going to feel comfortable to not get KO'd going in there with Grant Dawson. So maybe that'll open up Beneil Dariush's chances in this fight. But either way, that's the fight to make. I feel like that is Grant Dawson's ticket into the top 10. That's the only guy that the UFC would give him to fight just because it'd be a good grappling matchup. And Dawson's got this boring style. And the UFC probably doesn't want him to get rid of a fun, entertaining striker. So it's like, well, we got to kind of bump him up. Let's give him Beneil because at least there'll be some nice scrambles, right? Diego Ferreira, I want to see him fight Elvis Brenner. That's the guy that comes to mind. He's coming off of a loss. And Diego Ferreira's coming off of a loss, so let's see that fight. On to the next one, Billy Elekana versus Tuco Tokos. That's the fight to make, right? We're going to get to Bogdan Guskov, who beat Billy Elekana. Is there any narrative shift? For Billy Elekana, yes, because no one knew who he was. Now people know who he is. And out-grappling and beating Bogdan Guskov in the first round, pretty impressive for your UFC debut. I think he should remain in that weight class. He looks to be small for light heavyweight. He was definitely a lot smaller than Bogdan, but I can tell this guy with a real training camp, obviously his cardio is going to be better. His speed is there. His grappling finesse is there. Stay in that weight class because it's going to be so much easier to get to the top of that weight class than it would be at middleweight, where you have so many prospects that aren't even ranked yet, like Joe Pyfer, right? Not only you have Joe Sodium, but you also have Bo. And not only do you have Bo, but you got guys like Michel Pereira. You got so many prospects in that division, right? Stay at light heavyweight. It's so shallow. And just, pack on some mass, pack on some weight. Get on the Real Food Cookbook, right? But either way, I want to see Billy Elekana, right? This is sort of, Billy Elekana's got that Uriah Faber type of vibe, man. He's going to be like Billy the Kid or something. So I want to see this guy take on Tuco Tokos. We know how dangerous Tuco Tokos is. And Tuco's just a bad man. So I want to see that fight, Billy Elekana versus Tuco Tokos. All right? That's the fight to make after Tuco Tokos lost to the New Zealand kickboxer. Let's get on to the next one. Bogdan. I want to see Bogdan fight someone higher up there, but I've got a bunch of light heavyweight matchups made. We recently heard about Magomed and Ferreira. I'm going to make a video on that. I'm so happy that that fight is official now. But I think there's an odd man out. There's someone that Bogdan could go up against, and that's Nikita Krylov, who hasn't fought in forever, man. Don't know what's going on with Nikita, but I think that's the fight to make. Nikita Krylov versus Bogdan Guskov. I was thinking about maybe do the Ozdemir rematch, but I don't know. I'm not really dying to see a rematch. It's not like that fight was that amazing. Let's get on to Payton Talbott versus Raoni Barcelos. Raoni Barcelos, give him like Cody Garbrandt, right? Give him a Garbrandt. Give him like a nice bonus for beating Talbot, but not someone that's like that relevant and like a young up-and-comer. Give him like a fun fight with Garbrandt. And then Talbot, this is really the interesting thing. Obviously, we got to talk about the narrative change. The guy can't wrestle, right? Doesn't have the best defensive grappling, to say the least. He has to work on that, because if he doesn't, if you're getting done like that against Raoni Barcelos, even though the bantamweight division is not stacked with like guys that are only wrestling, like a Merab, for example. But I guess my point is, a lot of the bantamweights just can wrestle because of how well-rounded everyone is. And Barcelos is predominantly a striker. So it's like, man, a lot of people are going to be able to pull out the wrestling in that division. Payton Talbott's really got to work on that, right? Everyone was talking about this guy just surging to the rankings this year. Hey, he's going to fight this guy, then he'll fight Pedro Munoz, then he'll be in a number one contenders fight. We're going to have to slow our roll. But I still want Payton Talbott to fight someone that has an ability to wrestle. And I don't want to just give him another Yanez Gamori or whatever, like a free win where he's just going to KO someone in the first 10 seconds. So what I'm thinking is, for Payton Talbott, Miles Johns or Ricky Simon. Ricky Simon has a bit of a name to him. He's been in some big fights. He's been in a UFC main event. He's got to win over Merab, right? But he's on a downward spiral in his career. His chin is not as good as it used to be, and his wrestling is not that dominant. But again, it's like for Payton Talbott. Listen, Ricky Simon just lost to Vinicius Oliveira. Okay? That was Vinicius Oliveira's second UFC fight. Like, he's been losing a lot. And yes, you can give Talbott a really easy matchup, but it's like, man, get Talbott in there against a guy that can wrestle so he has a lot of time to prepare for it, where it's no secret what Ricky Simon's going to try to do to him. And then if you don't want to do Ricky Simon, Miles Johns would be a tiny bit easier, but that's still a guy that can wrestle. He's got a big, gnarly overhand, sort of like a small, more wrestling-heavy Josh Emmett type of guy. So I think those are the guys that I want to see Payton Talbott fight, Johns or Ricky Simon. Let's get on to Sergey Spivac and Jilton Almeida. Narrative shift, I think people are starting to come around to Jilton Almeida as being someone that can be somewhat entertaining. Back in the day, not back in the day, but last year everyone was complaining about his inability to finish Derek Lewis. Oh, he's just going to dive at the legs of Curtis Blades. But we now have 2 first-round finishes in a row for Jilton Almeida. And we saw his boxing. We actually saw him have a moment where he was lighting someone up on the feet, which is obviously entertaining. So I think people are starting to respect him more, and he called out Gane. That's the fight to make. Let's do him versus Ciryl Gane. I know Gane just beat Volkov, but it wasn't really a win. Everyone knows that was a robbery. And Almeida, 100% finish potential. I mean, not potential, 100% finish rate, damn near. I mean, he's not there yet. He's not there at all, just because he didn't finish Derek Lewis. But still, he's basically finishing everybody. If Gane can beat Almeida, then give him a title fight. But will he? I don't think so. I think Almeida would probably beat Gane, but that's the fight to make, right? It's not like you can do Almeida-Curtis Blades rematch because Curtis Blades has an opponent. And as for Spivac, yeah, it's tough that he lost to Almeida because he was in a dominant position early. It seemed like he was going to do really well. I want to see Spivac versus the winner of Shamil and Mick Parkin. I think that's the fight to make. Shamil Gaziev and Mick Parkin. Whoever wins that should fight Spivac next. Let's get on to Reinier de Ridder and Kevin Holland. Is there a narrative shift? Yes, I think the narrative shift on Reinier de Ridder is that before this fight, everyone was talking about how he's not that good. He's just kind of sloppy and he finds a way to win. But maybe that was just, again, because of Gerald Meerschaert being an excellent grappler. Reinier de Ridder can't just run through him, so he's going to be forced to strike. And when he's forced to strike, it is the case that he's not that good and he's sloppy. But on the ground, if Reinier de Ridder is going to be in there with a guy that's predominantly a striker, he is good enough to run through them. I mean, again, I don't mean to sound like Joe Rogan. I know people have outgrappled Kevin Holland, but who does that to Holland, man? Only Hamzat has done that to Holland. So finishing him in the first round is still impressive. man, I feel like a fool for picking against Reiner de Ridder in this matchup just because, like, I just fucking knew he was going to be able to do that. But I was just thinking, man, I feel like Holland is going to he's going to have a pep in his step. He's going to have, some good footwork early. He'll be able to catch Reiner, but I guess that's not the case. I want to see Reiner de Ridder fight a name. The middleweight division is really tricky just because there's so many good prospects and they're all fighting tooth and nail just to get ranked at like number 14, number 13 because of how many great fighters are at middleweight. But Reiner is not that young. He's like 33, 34 years old. He's been a champion in another promotion. The UFC kind of wants this guy to like have a bit of a faster track because he has all the experience. They're not really trying to build someone here. They're just trying to introduce him to the fans and give him that chance to, go up the rankings pretty quickly. And I'm okay with that, but you can't give him like a Baraujo yet. I say give Reiner de Ridder a Kopylov. I know that's a tough fight for Reiner, but it's also a tough fight for Kopylov. If Reiner de Ridder is this much of a beast on the ground, then he has a chance to beat Kopylov. And you know what? Kopylov lost his last fight when he fought a really good grappler in Hernandez. Let's see if he's improved. I don't think Reiner de Ridder is going to put the same type of pace on Kopylov that Anthony Hernandez did, but still, it's a winnable fight for both guys. If Reiner de Ridder beats Kopylov, that's a win that's going to get him a ton of respect. And if Kopylov beats Reiner de Ridder, after de Ridder just beat Kevin Holland, and now he's being talked about as like a Dricus du Plessis 2.0, he's got a name. That's a big win for Kopylov as well. So that's the fight that I want to see. And for Kevin Holland, let's give Kevin Holland the king of Kung Fu. Let's give Kevin Holland a fight with my brother. The guy, we talk about him. He's one of those guys sort of, he gets lost in his own world. He's one of these guys that, he's got a look of confusion, but you grab him and he's got like this heavily corded, build to him. I'm forgetting his name. The king of Kung Fu, man. That's why I want to see Kevin Holland go in there and fight. I want to see him fight the king of Kung Fu. So, fuck, man. What's his name, man? Shit. I'm not. Dude, I am not looking this up. I'm not looking this up. It's not a Liskarov, okay? Ah, man, dude, I'm going to get my ass kicked at the gym, man. Shit. What's his name? The king of Kung Fu. That's how you can't call me a casual, because I know that I know who I'm talking about because I know his nickname. If you know someone's nickname, you're ultra hardcore already. If we're going to the king of Kung Fu, right? Shit, man. I literally had it down with king of Kung Fu, bro. It's not Muin fought last night, brother. Who is it? He just got a spinning wheel kick KO. Shit, man. He got knocked out by Randy Brown. This is the guy that got KO'd by Li Jing Liang. I know who this guy is. I know who this guy is. It's just that I'm drawing a blank right now. But I've trained with a guy. This is actually a bad look. It's one of those things where, you like say hi to someone and you get their name and then it's like that's the only time you ever ask their name and then you just forget it and you always just say, hey, what's up, man? Instead of calling them their name. That's kind of like what it looks like is going on here, but I train with this guy all the time. What the fuck is this? Shit, dude. I know people are... I'm not editing this. This might go on for 2 hours, dude. Like, I'm just not going to edit it. I have to understand, what is this guy's name? Okay, I think the way to do it is by process of elimination. Is it an EV or an OV? It's an OV. He's got an OV at the end of his name. Ov. It's not a Liskarov. Muslim Salikhov, baby! I fucking knew it, dude. It's Muslim Salikhov. That's who I want to see Kevin Holland fight. My brother, Muslim Salikhov. I think it's a really fun matchup. It's a striking battle. It's basically like Kevin Holland going in there against a less output, older version of Wonderboy Thompson who's got an extra pop, right? So let's do Kevin Holland versus Muslim Salikhov. That's the fight to make. And then we want to get on to the next one. Jamahal Hill, Jiri Prochazka. Narrative shift. Jiri Prochazka's power is, he's just got more pop than Jamahal Hill. I've always said Jamahal Hill hits hard, but he's not like this one-hitter quitter KO guy. And Jiri hits harder than him. I remember having these arguments back in the day with people that would say, dude, Jamahal Hill hits harder than Jiri. What are you talking about? No, man. Jiri has like crazy KO power. Jamahal Hill has like light heavyweight KO power for a striker. But Yuri's got, in my opinion, the second most power in this division. So I think that, again, that's a big part of what won in the fight, because Jamahal Hill was landing some clean shots on Jiri. Also, Jiri Prochazka's head movement, his defense has gotten a lot better. I said in my recap video, I could just see Jiri doing this head movement drill where he's got the sandbag coming back and forth at him. I could see Jiri just doing that for 12 hours a day in the Czech Republic woods. He was probably doing that. And he improved. We saw an improved Jiri Prochazka. Did I see a guy that beats Alex Ferreira? I mean, dude, Ferreira, again, he's the one person that I think is just going to beat Jiri. I think Jiri beats everyone else, and he has beaten everyone else. And if you look at Yuri's resume, it's really, really solid. He's got Rakic. He's got former champion Jamahal Hill. He's got former champion Glover Teixeira. He took the belt off of him. He's got the guy that beat John Jones, Dominic Reyes. He's even got Volkan Ozdemir, right? Probably a former champion in some other promotion or something, like, a lot of fighters. But either way, Jiri Prochazka beats everyone, even Ankalaev, in my opinion. But I don't think he beats Alex, but he looked improved. And moving forward, I'm really liking Jiri Prochazka's chances even more, right? Because he's even harder to KO. In the Rakic fight, I mean, Jiri Prochazka looked like he was just asking to be KO'd with that type of defense. But now that it's improved and his chin is still intact, that's another thing. People were saying maybe Jiri Prochazka's chin is gone. His chin is still intact. That's amazing. Improved defense, still having a granite chin, and having ridiculous power, and having the holy martial arts ghost. Jiri Prochazka is just impossible to beat unless your name is Alex. But who do I want to see Jiri fight next? It's not the winner of Ferreira and Magomed. I'm sorry. If it's Magomed, actually, I wouldn't mind it. But I think they would probably do the rematch between Ferreira and Magomed. But I think that if it's Alex, then I just don't want to see Jiri fight Alex again. It's just not interesting to me. I know that he wants to get that one back, but I'd like to see him fight the winner of Olberg and Jan. Jiri Prochazka and Jan, both guys have been at the top of this division for a long time. They've never fought. That would be a phenomenal fight. Carlos Olberg, surging, up-and-coming contender, really good left hook. It could be like a good litmus test to see how he would do again against Alex Ferreira with this improved defense. So that would be a really good fight. Jiri versus the winner of Olberg and Jan Blachowicz. And for Jamahal Hill, I want to see Jamahal Hill fight Aleksandar Rakic. That's the one that I want to see. Rakic coming off of a loss to Jiri, coming off of a decision loss to Magomed. Jamahal Hill coming off of a second KO loss. Let's see if he can get back into the win column, and I think that's actually a pretty winnable fight for him. Is there a narrative shift with Jamahal Hill? Not really, because I think Jamahal looked good. Like, he was winning the second round. Jiri won the first round, but it really looked like Jamahal Hill, when he found his rhythm, when he found his range, he was starting to pop Jiri with the jab. He was starting to get the better of him in the clinch. He was actually starting to slip a lot of Jiri Prochazka shots. It really seemed like Jamahal Hill was taking over. He did well in that fight. And, again, getting dropped in the first round, recovering, he still looked pretty tough. I don't think his chin is gone. I just think, again, he just fought Jiri, who hits really hard, and that's what happens if you're in a striking battle with Jiri. One of you is going to get caught. Jamahal Hill got caught in the third round again. So it's a tough one for him because he did fight pretty well. It's just, that's how it is when you fight a guy as wild as Prochazka. There's a great chance that you could get KO'd. So Hill versus Rakic is the fight that I want to see next. Now let's get on to Umar Nurmagomedov and Merab Dvalishvili. Is there a narrative shift? I think that the biggest one is that most people before this fight were saying that Merab won title win. He's not the bantamweight GOAT. And even if he were to beat Umar on paper, this is before the fight, people were saying, dude, one title defense wouldn't be enough. But now it really does seem like at least half of the fans are on board with Merab Dvalishvili being the bantamweight GOAT. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Umar Nurmagomedov is such a respected name, and not only name, but just style. Like, again, this really was the toughest stylistic matchup for Merab Dvalishvili on paper. A Nurmagomedov that has really good grappling, but also has insanely good striking at a long range, similar to O'Malley, where he can kind of keep you at range, and he's explosive, and he's big for the division. He's got good cardio. He's got it all. He's as well-rounded as it can possibly get. And Merab still fucking beat him, right? So it's like, I just think people are respecting this win so much because it'd be one thing if Merab just 49-46 him, won the second, third, fourth, and fifth, and dominated those rounds so much, like Umar was just totally out of it, then I think people would be saying, man, Umar just wasn't that great, right? But I actually think the fact that Merab winning the later rounds is very impressive. Obviously, I talked about that in my recap if you want to hear me just talk about how insane it is to see Merab do what he's actually doing. But my point is, Umar was still in there. Like, he was still fighting tooth and nail. It wasn't until the fourth and fifth where he was visibly, like, just exhausted. And, right, Merab would shuck him off when Umar would go for a takedown. And Umar looked to be struggling to get up to his feet, to get back up, right? But still, Umar was landing shots. Umar was in there doing okay, making it somewhat competitive, still looking decent, which goes to show that, like, Umar has a good gas tank. Umar is tough. Umar is well-rounded. It's just that Merab is that much better than everyone just because of his mentality, his toughness, his cardio. But I think most people are on board right now with Merab being the bantamweight GOAT because, again, how tough Umar Nurmagomedov is to beat. And Merab just fucking crashing into him, taking him down. It was an unbelievable performance. And you look at the resume. Aldo on a 3-fight win streak. Dude, this is the thing. People say he beat an old Aldo. 35-year-old Aldo. That's the age of Volkanovski when he fought Ilia Topuria. We look at Volk as slightly older these days, but 35-year-old Volk, we still think of him as, like, really good. Aldo was 35 in that fight on a 3-fight win streak. If he had beat Merab, he was going to be fighting Aljamain Sterling, and a lot of people were saying he could beat Aljo at the time. You got Henry Cejudo. Still looks pretty good. Slightly older, but whatever. Peter Yan, 50-45. Insane. Sean O'Malley. Beating Sean O'Malley is an amazing win. And now you have Umar Nurmagomedov, and before that you have Marlon Moraes, and you have not Miles Johns. You have John Dodson. You have other good wins as well. Dude, Merab Dvalishvili's resume is second to none at bantamweight, okay? And I think he's a top 10 fighter of all time. I think he's passed a bunch of the old heads. Maybe I'll make a video about exactly who he has passed. But narrative shift for Umar, not real. I mean, I guess not as built different as Merab, man. I guess that's it. But there's not really a huge narrative shift because he still looked decent. It's just, how could anyone keep up with Merab, you know? But I will say this, Umar Nurmagomedov saying he broke his hand, and I don't doubt that he broke his hand, but then saying that he thought he won the fight, I thought there was a little bit of cope going on with Umar Nurmagomedov there. Of course, you know, he just had his first loss in his career. He was incredibly confident. Walked out to a Georgian song, right? And he was saying, I'm more Georgian than Merab. In a way, I kind of like the fact that Merab big brothered him in there. Because, again, Umar was saying last picture with the belt, and he was saying Merab was ducking him, and it's kind of nice to see the OG, the old head Merab, sort of put Lil Bro in his place. I still like Umar Nurmagomedov. I mean, I still think he's going to be a future champion. I picked him to win this fight because of how good he was. It's just, man, dude, Merab is he's just an animal, man. So let's talk about what's next. For Umar, I want to see him fight the winner of Cejudo versus Song Yadong. I think that would be a really good fight. I'm picking Song, so I think that'd be a tough fight. If Song beats Cejudo, you know, that's a guy who has maybe a little bit of a lack of wrestling. We saw that against Peter Yan, but I just also think Peter Yan's a really good offensive wrestler. And yeah, you can take down Song Yadong, but on the feet, he's really difficult to deal with. Or Figueiredo. Figueiredo would also be interesting, who's coming off of a loss to Peter Yan. Some people are saying that Figgy should fight Pantoja next, but man, I want to see Figgy stay at 135. And I think that'd be an interesting fight, him and Umar. For Merab, though, I want to see Merab fight the winner of Petr Yan and Sean O'Malley if they decide to make that fight, okay? That would also give Merab some time off. I mean, he's got all these injuries. The guy's training 24/7. Obviously, his type of training is probably not optimal for recovery. And that would be good for him, right? Because I feel like the one thing that's going to get to Merab is age. The injuries piling up. So if we wait to see him fight the winner of Yan and O'Malley, that would give him some time. Or you could just do Merab versus Yan next, and we could get O'Malley versus Corey Sandhagen, because I also wouldn't mind that. So maybe we could do like Merab versus Yan in the summer, the rematch, because Yan is on a 2-fight win streak. And for O'Malley, give him Sandhagen or something like that. So yeah, But let's get on to the main event. Islam Makhachev and Renato Moicano. For Moicano, not really a narrative shift, to be honest. And the fight was so fast, it was almost anticlimactic. And in a way, you could look at that as something that would like completely kill your hype. But I think, again, it's not like Moicano got dominated the way he did against RDA. Yes, like Islam finished him fast, and that's not good for him. But in general, it's not like we saw Makhachev just like totally piece this guy up and destroy him and ground and pound him and then submit him. It was like a finesse submission out of nowhere, right? But I want to see Moicano versus Paddy Pimblett. That's the fight that I want to see. I know they're doing Pimblett versus Michael Chandler, but if Pimblett wins that, I think Moicano versus Pimblett would be a sick fight. There's a lot of talk about that fight. And for Makhachev, narrative shift, I guess when it comes to his legacy, the narrative shift is that he keeps fighting people on short notice. And on one hand, people are saying that it's not his fault. Well, yes, it isn't his fault, but it is how it is, right? Beating Moicano is not as good as beating Arman Tsarukyan. So even though it's not his fault, this win doesn't do as much for his legacy as an Arman. And that's just how it is. That's unfortunate. But I think it's clear that Makhachev's going to fight at lightweight again because Belal Shavkat isn't even booked. We don't know when that is. It's probably not going to be until the late summer. And then that's probably going to be a war. And they're going to have to recover after that. So if Belal wins, Makhachev's still going to have to stay at lightweight because he doesn't want to fight Belal. And if Shavkat wins, you know, he'll have to wait for Shavkat to recover after the Belal fight, assuming it goes into deep waters and whatnot. Which means that Makhachev is going to stay at lightweight, which means that we got to get him someone to fight. And the only two options I can think of, other than someone moving up a weight class like Ilia Topuria, which I don't think is going to happen, is Arman or Charles Oliveira. And everyone's saying Arman needs to get to the back of the line. Dana White's even been hinting at that Arman, I don't know, but he's going to have to fight his way back up. What I have to say to that is, listen, as a massive fan of Islam Makhachev that wants him to achieve GOAT status, like, I'm not just going to sit here and be like, yeah, dude, I'm so happy, like, he doesn't have to fight Arman because Arman's a tough test and he ruined his opportunity. Thank goodness Makhachev doesn't have to go through that tough test, right? Because I feel like a lot of Makhachev fans are sort of saying that. They're not saying it like that, but they're sort of implying that they're really happy that he doesn't have to fight Arman again. But why were we so excited for the Arman fight to begin with? Because a lot of us came to the conclusion that if there's anyone at lightweight that has a decent style to beat Makhachev, it's Arman. And I'm sorry, but I just can't get that hyped up for Islam Makhachev to fight the guy that just lost to Arman Tsarukyan, Charles Oliveira. Okay? Someone that he's already beat. And it's not the same thing as Makhachev beating Arman way back in the day when Arman was a tadpole. No. Makhachev and Charles Oliveira fought when they were in their prime just 2 years ago. I still want to see the Arman fight. That is the only interesting matchup for Islam Makhachev right now. I get it. Arman fumbled his opportunity here. I understand it, but like, I mean, who else are we going to give Makhachev? Yeah, you could do Charles again, but man, he's going to beat Oliveira. And then it's just, then his resume is just going to be Volk twice, Oliveira twice, or, you know, he's going to have all these guys that he's beat twice. And the biggest issue is the longer you wait for the Arman fight, if you really do want to implement the Arman get to the back of the line type of system, we may never see it. We may never, ever see it, which is going to be a problem because I want to see Islam Makhachev fight the one guy that we know is capable of giving him a run for his money in that division. All right? Stylistically, it's not Oliveira. It's a guy that can wrestle. It's someone that's got that short and stocky style that we know did well against him in the first fight that's improved tenfold. If we don't see this fight and Makhachev fights Oliveira next and they make Arman go through two more opponents, Makhachev may move up to 170 and Arman may become champion at 155, and that's going to be the biggest what if. The Arman fight is objectively more entertaining than anything else you can make. It just is. And then some people were saying Arman versus Oliveira. It's like, yeah, okay, we could see that if you want to give Makhachev a lot of time off, but it's the same thing. Arman's probably going to beat Charles. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe Oliveira finishes him in the rematch, but that would also be unfortunate because styles make fights, and even though Makhachev could beat Oliveira in a rematch after Oliveira potentially beats Arman in their rematch, right? Doesn't mean Makhachev would beat Arman. That's the fight. I still want to see it. I don't want to just move past this and pretend like, oh, Makhachev and Arman is totally irrelevant these days. What else are you going to do? We saw Poirier, right? We've already seen the Oliveira fight. What are we going to do? Grant Dawson? Justin Gaethje? Gaethje's got to fight with Dan Hooker. What are we going to do? The winner of Gaethje and Hooker fights Makhachev? That shit's boring. He's already destroyed Dan Hooker. There's literally nothing else. This is the only one. Gamrot, we're just going to give Gamrot the title after he lost to Hooker? It's the only fight. It's either Charles or Arman. It has to be Arman. And it's not going to be, which sucks. So it's a problem. It is actually a problem. Oh yeah, I can't wait for the Oliveira rematch. Like, don't get me wrong. You guys know I like Charles Oliveira, but I just want to see Makhachev fight the one guy that we know is going to give him some struggle. Okay? Because if he beats Oliveira again, yeah, it's good for his resume, but nowhere near as beating Arman. Nowhere near as good as beating Arman again. So, I mean, that's the fight. That's still the fight to make. Yeah, I guess Arman's going to have to win one more, but the way Dana White's talking and the fans are talking, it seems like they're going to want to make Arman go and get like a number 9 ranked guy and then fight again. So it's probably going to be the Charles Oliveira rematch, which can be fun. It still is a tough fight for Makhachev. It's not a walkover. It's much tougher than Moicano because Oliveira is more dangerous on the feet and he's better on the ground. But still, I want to know if you guys agree with that. I understand the mentality of Arman blew his opportunity. You can't reward him again, but he is still the number 1 contender. Just because he didn't fight, he didn't lose. I know that was what the secret move was, right? Oh, if I can't fight, I can't lose. But still, you know, he's not all of a sudden a guy that just lost 2 fights in a row by KO. And that's how people are sort of treating this. If it's not Ilya, which it won't be, because it seems like Makhachev don't want that fight, it's going to be Charles or Arman. Would you guys rather see Charles fight just to spite Arman? Because I feel like a big part of it is that. Just to spite Arman for pulling out, we're going to see the Charles fight. I understand that a lot of people were clamoring for an Oliveira rematch after his performance against Michael Chandler. I'm not saying Charles Oliveira doesn't deserve this fight, because let's not forget, after he fought Islam and lost, he had the Beneil Dariush win. Now he has the Chandler win. That's 2 wins out of his last 3. That's pretty good. I'm not saying Oliveira is not deserving of a title whatsoever. I'm just saying that if we don't see the Arman fight soon, we're never going to see it. And it's going to be a shame that Makhachev's potential toughest matchup at lightweight is someone that he's never going to fight. It's just going to be a big what if on his resume, even though he already beat Arman back in the day. You guys get what I'm saying. I sound like a broken record at this point, but yeah, I still want to see it. I really want to see it, because there's nothing else. What are we going to do? Wait for Pimblett to beat Michael Chandler? No, Pimblett versus Makhachev. Yeah. We're all going to pretend that Pimblett versus Makhachev is actually really exciting. Pimblett versus... Yeah. No, dude. No. Okay? Pimblett versus Makhachev is not more exciting just because we fuck Arman, man. Get him out of there. Dude, like, okay? Come on, because I feel like that's where the fans are going. That's where Dana White's going. Yes. They're going to freaking kick him off in the Bellator. Arman is still the toughest fight for Makhachev. I still think Makhachev beats him, but just because Arman pulled out, I want to see that even more. It's probably going to be Oliveira next. But some people, again, are saying Charles rematch with Arman. Winner fights Makhachev. If the UFC says that the winner will fight Makhachev, then I won't mind it. Because even though I do think Arman handily won the Oliveira fight, a 5-round fight could look different. And it was competitive on the ground. Okay? But yeah, I still want the Arman fight. That is the best fight at lightweight. And I'm not just going to forget about it just because he pulled out last second. Okay? And as a Makhachev fan, I don't want Makhachev to have easier matchups than the Arman matchup. Like, if that matchup is there, I want to see him fight the toughest matchup, because that window of time is closing. Makhachev is only going to be at lightweight for so much longer. All right, so Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time.